Cloud computing is nothing new. However, cloud has become so persuasive that it's really hard to find a single financial services company that really doesn't have some kind of cloud migration roadmap. By taking the right approach to mainframe modernization, financial services companies can truly maximize the value of existing investments. We're really building on an IT environment which is agile, cost effective, and ready for the future. My name is Nav Singh. I'm the head of marketing and communications for the banking and capital markets vertical here at DXC Technology. Joining me today is Jay Hibbin, who's the head of cloud services at DXC Technology. Jay, thank you very much for joining us today.
Great to be here.
So Jay, if I may start off by asking you the first question, what are some of the challenges faced by financial services companies when it comes to cloud implementation?
Yeah, thanks, Nav. So there are a number of challenges that we see faced by financial services firms. There was a recent report by Publicis Sapient on the future of cloud in banking, and that focused on the ambition and execution gap as two of the major obstacles to a firm really achieving the cloud's full potential. Some of what they said in that report really aligns with what we see in the market. So specifically on the ambition gap, they talked about the delta between business leaders and IT leaders. So senior leadership or business leadership in an organization often have a focus on cost reduction rather than business transformation through cloud, with something like 33% of them really understanding how you can achieve business transformation through cloud, versus technology heads who have a much more well-rounded understanding of how cloud can enable that business transformation. So there's that misalignment in most organizations between business leadership and IT leadership that drives a potential obstacle to fully achieving cloud's potential. And then the other thing they talked about was execution gaps. And a number of those resonate with what we see in the market when we talk to customers. So particularly, and we'll come back to this, I think, later, but security concerns is the top one there. And this has changed quite dramatically over the last 5-10 years. So security is now both a potential barrier and an opportunity when it comes to cloud adoption. Firms are worried about fraud, they're worried about data loss, but actually the reality is that the base cloud security is stronger really than on-prem security fundamentally. But where the risk comes is in the lack of knowledge around how to configure cloud security. And that lack of knowledge can expose risks versus the on-prem alternative. And it's often good choices that need to be made. It's the experience to know what those good choices are when it comes to cloud security that we often see as lacking where clients need help. The other execution gap that Publicis Sapient focused on was a skills gap, and we see that a lot with clients. So attracting, retaining the right skills, having a really comprehensive upskilling plan is really critical. And more clients are coming to DXC and looking to build combined squads, so mixing DXC expertise with their own staff in order to achieve both the objective of transforming an application or migrating to cloud, but also to enable people to be upskilled on the job during the process of migration. So those are some of the key things that resonated in that report.
Thanks. Are there any other challenges that you see?
Yeah, there are a couple of other challenges, particularly related to banking and capital markets. So the number one probably is regulatory risk or regulatory landscape that firms are deploying into. So we've seen the rollout of operational resilience rules from the PRA and FCA in the UK, and recently the adoption of the Digital Operational Resilience Act, or DORA, by the EU Council. And both of these require additional work when it comes to rolling out and adopting cloud services. So having to test and identify important business services and then look at plausible disruption scenarios and making sure that you have operational resilience plans to cover those. So the whole regulatory landscape is changing, and there's an increased focus on systemic risk in the market when it comes to public cloud service providers, which we're seeing rolling out at the moment. The other risk, I guess, or the other issue that we see is just more broadly around technical debt. So a lot of large firms have legacy estates that have been rolled out over decades with potentially tens or even hundreds of millions of investment spent on them. And these legacy estates are in danger of being left behind, basically. They can be too risky to move, too costly to re-architect, and too expensive to operate in the cloud. So DXC is looking at how we can address that more broadly, because that's a big risk a lot of firms face when they look at cloud adoption.
Jay, thank you very much for that. So how important is cloud for a bank's security?
Yeah, I mean, security is an interesting, like I said before, it's an interesting change in dynamics. So if you went back 5 or 10 years, it would have been a barrier to adoption. Looking forward, it's actually considered an opportunity, I think, by most customers now in this market. Recently, Deloitte released a study. They were looking at the future of cloud, and they surveyed a whole bunch of firms in the market. And cybersecurity came out as an opportunity rather than a barrier. So something like 90% of respondents were seeing positive value from updating their security processes and adopting cloud-based cyber, which enabled them to get additional benefits around being more agile for future threats, addressing regulatory compliance requirements more efficiently, the ability to improve their capability to detect and address security risks. So I think it's flipped really from being a real barrier to a real opportunity, but there is still this skills gap I mentioned. So there's an issue there that you have to know how to overlay the right application, the right data, the right infrastructure, security services. Many times these are cloud versions of more traditional security appliances that you would have seen on-prem, but you've got to do that in the right way, and you need to have the experience to know when the native cloud service is good enough or when you need to overlay a particular technology in order to improve the maturity of the security solution to get that real robust set of security controls you need in public cloud.
Well, that's brilliant. So if a financial services company really wants to move into cloud-based services, is this move something which can be steered by the existing organization and the people present at the pre-cloud phase, or do we really need to move to a new type of competency which will then become a fundamental change on how to do business ultimately?
Yes, I think to break that down, you've got to start by asking the question, why do you want to move to cloud services in the first place? And I think this goes back to that ambition gap I mentioned between business leaders and IT leaders, right? So what is your rationale for moving to cloud services? Is it just because it's the current trend? Is it because there's a broad notion that this technology change is going to automatically deliver cost savings? So you've got to get down to understanding the real strategic rationale for moving to cloud. And that's key here, right? That's the first foundational step in DXC's Cloud Right approach, actually. So in DXC's experience, the number one reason why cloud projects fail isn't because they don't fail because technology constraints or because technology doesn't work. They fail because the business objectives were not agreed and aligned across the organization. So that either means they weren't talked about properly, they weren't properly documented, there wasn't a clear understanding of why you were making that move towards cloud, or they fail because different groups have got different views on that, right? So the IT leadership has one view, the business leadership has another view, they're not aligned, and then bad things happen when you actually get into the execution phase. You end up with no clear direction. The application transformation strategy then starts to fail because people don't have a clear idea of why we're making the particular moves in the particular order we are. And you can end up throwing a lot of money at transforming apps to public cloud and not realizing any strategic objectives that benefit the bank's bottom line. So we often see people select public cloud providers first, and this ends up being prioritized ahead of setting that strategic rationale and identifying changes to the culture of the organization and the operating model which are necessary to have a successful cloud adoption project. So coming back to your question, can it be done by the people and the organization in a pre-cloud phase? It can, but you've got to acknowledge that getting the strategic rationale right first is essential, and then focusing on the operating model that's going to enable the business to drive the transformation needed. So putting priority on initiatives within the organization that drive the bottom line is really key here. So this could be an analytics project, adopting machine learning techniques on an existing data set that the bank has that's going to drive out new cross-sell opportunities for the organization. Such a kind of activity can then help fund other activities because it's generating bottom line results early. And that also changes the culture because it provides an early win and it builds momentum within the organization and allows them to go on and solidify the program and the changes that are needed in order to drive a much broader cloud adoption and transformation.
So how can DXC help?
There are a number of ways that DXC can help. I think the first thing to say, to set the context really for that, is we recognize that hybrid cloud is going to be the likely position that most large established financial firms are going to be in for the foreseeable future. Like I said, people have made decades of investment, potentially tens of millions, maybe more, in their existing estates. So this approach that DXC has is around bringing the right investments at the right time on the right platforms. So both existing private cloud platforms, but also public cloud platforms. And we call that approach overall our cloud right approach. And within that, there are fundamentally 5 things we can do to help our clients achieve their objectives. So the first one isn't really about cloud at all. It's about improving the overall IT performance and reliability across the estate. And DXC is focused on hyper automation to bring about this improvement. So we've developed something like 16,000 bots focused on automating processes, automating resolution to incidents, automating security alerts, security incidents. And we've seen some real measurable change as a result of that hyper automation. So 65% reduction in P1 outages across our customers' estates, something like a 37% improvement in mean time to repair, and a 90% reduction in the number of SLA penalties that get paid out under existing contracts. So real meaningful, measurable results as a result of concentrating on that automation in the IT estate. And that has benefits when you come to approach a cloud project. And then around kind of accelerating cloud adoption itself, DXC migrates around 17,000 applications per year. We've got a 98% success rate in moving those workloads to cloud. So these are migrations that really stick, and that's significantly above the industry average for migrating workloads to cloud. And as part of that, we provide a range of services. So cloud advisory services, I talked about the importance of getting the strategic rationale right, getting the culture change right, getting the operational model right. So that's all part of our cloud advisory services, helping our customers realize business value from cloud projects. We also provide design, architecture, build services, so helping customers deploy on public cloud, set up their landing zones, set up the governance, set up the security, get that right first time. We provide migration services and transformation services for applications, build joint change squads and transformation squads that help upskill our clients as well as bring about the transformation needed. And then we provide ongoing managed services, so managed cloud operations on an ongoing basis for customers. And aside from the cloud kind of migration piece, there's also a very important area around DC transformation. So a number of our large customers in financial services have got existing data centers still that need to be transformed or exited. DXC ourselves have transformed our own data center estate. We had something like 220 data centers a few years ago. We're now down to 72 data centers. So we've had to move over 1,200 clients as part of that rationalization of our data center estate. And we've done that with zero downtime to any of those clients in all of those moves across those data centers. So we have a wealth of expertise around data center closure and rationalization. We also have a specialist practice that deals with mainframe modernization, which is particularly important in financial services and banking. So looking at cloud transformation, looking at modernization of the mainframe, looking at how you can improve productivity. We've seen up to a 50% improvement in productivity on the mainframe and reduction of power as well used by mainframe services. And then the last area is around driving network performance improvements. So looking at how we can re-architect networks based on workload placement and based on security, which is an area that we're getting increasing interest from customers, which aligns with the kind of edge compute and cloud adoption strategy that a lot of customers have. So those are some of the areas that we're helping clients with today. A lot of experience that comes from managing critical applications for decades for clients that we're now bringing into a hybrid cloud world.
That's great. So where can our audience go to learn more?
Yeah, no worries. If people want to know more, you can always go to dxc.com/banking to find out more about the services we offer.
Jay, thank you very much for joining us today and for providing these useful insights into why cloud computing is so important in financial services. And thank you for joining us today. We hope you found these insights really useful that were provided by Jay. Should you have any questions in regards to why cloud computing is so important in financial services, or any other questions in relation to cloud computing in this industry, please feel free to get in touch with myself or Jay. We're here to help.